Hello and namaste and welcome to Vishwarang, the Tagore International Literature and Arts Festival 2020, organized by the Rabindranath Tagore University, Bhopal. My name is Siddharth Chaturvedi and I welcome you all to this session as the co-director of the Vishwarang Festival. Vishwarang is one of the biggest virtual celebration of Indian literature, arts, culture, cinema, and music at the global stage. The festival goes truly global this year, with 16 countries joining hands in celebrating the essence of Indian culture across the globe. Today, we are in conversation with an award-winning, best-selling author with more than 17 titles to her credit, and with someone who has been the recipient of some 15 prestigious awards. An author who can straddle effortlessly between genres ranging from fiction to magical realism, myth, and fantasy, and an author who has written about strong and interesting women characters as the central heroes. Please welcome celebrated poet, short story writer, activist, and teacher of writing, Ms. Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni. Welcome to Vishwarang, Chitra ji.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here with you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to have you at Vishwarang Festival. And to moderate today's discussion, we have with us Dr. Seema Raizada, who is currently Professor of English at MLB College, Bhopal. She's also a Shakespeare scholar who has her PhD and DLED degrees on the works of the Bard and has also authored a book titled Double Vision of Shakespeare. She is the founder of Club Literati, which is an exclusive platform for both established and budding writers and artists, and all those who love to explore literature and other creative arts. She's also received appreciation for her contribution in the fields of literature and youth welfare. And most importantly, she started the Shakespeare Festival in the year 2013. So welcome to Vishwarang, Seema ji.
Namaskar.
All right. So welcome all of you once again. And now I leave the session to our moderator, Dr. Seema, and to our invited author and speaker, Chitra ji. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Siddharth. It's a pleasure and privilege to share a few notable facts from the illustrious life and career of Chitra Divakaruni. We all know that Chitra wears several hats. And she is an award-winning author, and she has authored more than 18 books. And now, of course, she has a beautiful book, The Forest of Enchantments, as her latest, which is a feminist retelling of the epic, the Ramayana. She writes about contemporary life in America and India, women's experiences, immigration, history, and mythology. And her work has been published in over 100 magazines and anthologies. And her books have been translated into 29 languages and have been bestsellers nationally and internationally. And she has won many awards. Prominent among them, I would like to name a few. The American Book Award, a Penn Josephine Miles Award, Premio Scano, which is also known as the Italian Nobel Award, and a Light of India Award. And most recently, a Houston Literary Award. And let me tell you, in 2015, she was included in the Economic Times list of 20 most influential global Indian women. And she has herself judged several prestigious awards, such as the National Book Award and the Penn Faulkner Award. And books are made into movies, short films, and plays. And Divakaruni teaches in the nationally ranked creative writing program at the University of Houston. So welcome, Chitra, and it's a pleasure to be in discussion with you.
Thank you so much. It is my pleasure, absolutely.
Right, Chitra. So, Chitra, one feels quite awed by the variety of genres that you write in. Poetry, fiction, both long and short, fantasy, magical realism, young adult, children fiction, mythology, historical fiction. In short, what I would like to call you, you are a writer of many parts. So, so tell me, how do you see yourself as a multi-genre author, and what came first, and how you went on to adopt new and other interesting genres? Tell us about your creative journey, Chitra.
Sure. You know, what is most astonishing for me as I look back on my journey as a writer is that all the time that I was growing up, for like the first 25 years of my life, I never thought I would be a writer. I didn't think I had any talent. I didn't really write anything. And it was only after I moved to the US that writing became so important to me. And I think that was partly because I found myself in such a different culture. And my own Indian culture seemed so far away. I came to the US in the 1970s. So, you know, you can imagine, before the internet, before all of the easy access that people have across nations and across the world now. I didn't have any of that. I couldn't even call home very regularly because it was so expensive at that time. And as a student, I did not have the money. So, you know, I turned to writing to just make sense of my life, to remember my past, to keep in touch with India and Indian culture, and also to discover America, to make sense of what was this land all about? So, and I started with poetry. I went on to short stories. And finally, when I felt confident, I started writing novels. And I love all those forms, but I think the novel is really my favorite because it is the most challenging of the forms, at least for me.
Yes, that's it. So coming to novel, one thing I would like to mention here, that your novel, one amazing thing, has been chosen as a citywide or campus-wide read in over 30 cities and institutions across the US. So congratulations, Chitra, on that achievement. And also, a few years back, Houston Grand Opera asked you to write the words, or the libretto as they're called, for an opera that would be an immigrant Indian story. So the opera was performed in Texas, I believe, and then picked up by another opera house and performed in California. And then,
Correct.
not to forget that story clothes from your collection of stories, Arranged Marriage, was made into a play in California and into a musical in Toronto. So tell me, how does it feel to see the extensive reach of your works?
I just feel very thankful to God. That's all I can say. I'm just filled with gratitude to, you know, God for, I don't know. I mean, the words come through me, but they are from Him. So I'm just thankful. And I'm also very appreciative of all my readers, every single one of them, because without readers, what would a writer be? And I'm also completely astonished that so many people in so many countries can relate to the work. I'm just very thankful about that. But I think that is also the magic of literature. You know, it brings people together. It brings people from many different countries, many different cultures
Absolutely.
to appreciate the human truth that's at the heart of all our lives.
And that's exactly what we see in your works, especially the two retellings of the epics. Well, uh, talking further about the books, like for example, The Mistress of Spices and The Sister of My Heart have been made into movies, and several other are under option in Hollywood and in India. And your short story, The Word Love, was made into an award-winning short film, Amarma. Um, Similarly, the Palace of Illusions has been performed on the stage in US and India. And Mistress of Spices is in the process of being made into an opera. So Chitra, I mean, like from novel to movies to opera. So what makes them a popular adaptation material across genres and nations?
Well, you know, I'm quite mystified myself. I don't know if I have the answer, but I hope it is because of the characters. Because for me, character is always at the heart of my books. And that's what I really try to do. Yes, of course, Everything else is also important. The setting is important, the ideas are important. But if the characters don't come alive, I don't feel the book is successful. So I spend a lot of time on humanizing my characters and making them complex, especially I think with the Palace of Illusions and Forest of Enchantments, where I was working on the characters of Draupadi and Sita, who are already so amazingly complex. But I wanted to, with them and with the characters, and for example, Mistress of Spices, I wanted to go into the heart of the woman and kind of understand, what did she feel? What was she thinking? What did she learn? What did she learn that I can learn from and be inspired by, and my readers also? And I think perhaps that's what people respond to, a complex character that they can reach across countries and ages and, I don't know, different cultures, and learn something from, relate to in some way.
That's true, and I think that is the magic that you have put in, a magic that is uh, it's like a truth, as you said. It's a universal truth and absolutely humanizing element in your characters. So coming to these very significant retellings of the epics. Now, Chitra, I mean, we know that epics caught your imagination, and but retelling of epical stories is a double-edged sword, if I may call it so.
Very
Uh,
much so.
you
You
are
are
treading
right.
on a yes, so you are treading on a fantastical yet familiar path where readers come with their own baggage, their own set of opinions, welded onto a kind of subtext of their imagination and their religious, cultural, or national loyalties. Now, in this given background, Chitra, what was your strategy? The checks and balances that you might have had to adopt in writing the two acclaimed retellings, The Palace of Illusions and The Forest of Enchantments.
Well, first of all, I should tell you that I was quite nervous. I was very nervous when I started Palace of Illusions, which is the one I did first. I did a lot of research, and then finally I was like, okay, I think I understand something about the character of Draupadi, whom I call Panchali in the book. And I think I can get started. So I have to tell you this story. I start writing Palace of Illusions, and the next day, there is this huge storm in Houston, and lightning strikes our house. And it does serious damage. It breaks like a part of our chimney, and the roof is damaged. And my husband is like, that is the gods telling you that you should not write this book.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very natural fear on his part.
My husband is a big supporter of my writing, Murthy. I really appreciate him. But at that time, I said, no, no, I think it is divine inspiration being sent.
I think that the best and the safest way to, go on with your writing.
Yes, I said, I mean, after this, what else can happen? So, but it gave me a lot of, really, I really had to have a lot of courage to write that book. I prayed for courage. And really, throughout writing these two books, I have prayed more than ever in my writing of any other books. And I said, please, I'm writing this with truly a desire of the heart to bring these women alive and to make them part of our culture today in a way that other women can relate to them, learn from them, uh, be inspired by their strengths. There's so much for us to learn from both Sita and Draupadi. They're
Agree.
not they're not characters of some other age. They're really very contemporary. And I hope that in Palace of Illusions and Forest of Enchantments, I've managed to bring that out, how contemporary they are and how the challenges that they go through, we are still going through those kinds of challenges. So, I
That's true.
think that was at the heart of what I wanted to do. But it was scary because I knew, just like you said, these two books are very dear to people and they feel strongly about them. So I hoped that the fact that there are two things: the fact that I did a lot of research, so that I'm not just making up things about these characters. This is what is there in the different versions of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata that exist. So that was one. And the second thing is, I really wanted to focus on what is admirable about these characters. Even though my take was different, I went at it with a lot of respect for these characters. But I wanted to show one thing which is very important for me, and that is that these women are very human. They're complex,
Yes.
they're not perfect, because I don't believe any woman should be asked to be perfect. I don't think that was ever the desire of even the original writers, Valmiki or Vyas. They showed these women in their complexity, in their imperfections. There's still so much to admire and learn. So that was really what I wanted to bring out in the books. And I hope that, that is the reason or part of the reason why people have been very positive. And I'm truly thankful, especially with Forest of Enchantments and Sita. I was concerned, but I said to myself, okay, I'm not putting anything in this book which is not in one or other Ramayana even before me. So I'm really following in the footsteps of those great writers, and hopefully that will be good enough.
Right. So Chitra, you mentioned about this human quality. So I remember, a couple of instances in the Forest of Enchantment that, when Sita is given jewelry by Kaushalya, so she doesn't, very much like it. I mean, here you find a woman, is not that all, good and would accept everything, but she, feels within that uh, she has not got the right, of her choice. And secondly, when the Ram, expresses his concern and his love for Lakshman, she feels a little envious of that love. So I also feel that I mean, Sita in this case, that she is very human, and also, when once, she is in the forest, she remembers the comforts of the palace. And she, in a part of her probably would like to go back, but then, she is at the same time very adventurous. So I find her a mix of quite, what a model, a role model would be, and a modern woman, who has her own aspirations. So that way, yes, you're right that, you gave her all the attributes of a woman who can live in both the times, in the, coming, I mean, living in the pages probably of an epic, and then coming on to live in real life.
Yes, I'm so glad you pointed to those things. That is what makes Sita a complex and living character, I think. And she is, right? Because she is an avatar, but she has come down to earth. She has taken on a human
Yes.
form. She has human desires. She has human anger. She has human
Yes.
love. She has all those things, human regret. And that is why we can relate to her, because if she was like a goddess, if she was truly like a goddess, how could we reach her, right? How could we be like her? But now she is the way where we can learn from her, we can be like her, we can really use her to make our lives better and richer in some ways. That's kind of my hope. So I'm glad you picked up on those moments and enjoyed them.
Yes,
In fact, one of
absolutely.
my favorite moments is early in the book when Sita comes uh, to this very complicated living arrangement in Ayodhya, because King Dashrath has like 10,000 wives. Sita
Yes.
is not used to that,
Absolutely.
because her father only had one wife.
Yes.
Was used
Absolutely.
to that. So it's like this huge joint family situation,
Right,
and
right.
she has to keep everybody happy. The three main queens, Kaushalya, Kaikeyi, Sumitra.
That's
Kaushalya and
right.
Kaikeyi really don't get along that well, because Kaikeyi is the favorite. Kaushalya
That's true.
was the most important, but she's, somewhat ignored by Dashrath. So Sita has to think, what can I do to make things better for my mother-in-law? And she
Yeah.
comes up with, some plans. She
Yes.
cleverly thinks of some
Yes.
plans.
And
So I
Dashrath comes to have dinner and all at times there. Yeah.
yes.
So,
And
and
she
at the
tells
same
her
time,
mother-in-law what to do and what not to do
yes,
in order to
yes.
not annoy King Dasharath. So I really enjoyed writing that part.
Yes, and also, Chitra, Sita has her mother Sunaina at the back of her mind because she was. I mean, I feel there's quite, little resemblance between Sunaina, in terms of her curiosity, in terms of taking interest in state affairs, the way Kekai has. So when she comes to Ram's palace, she also has Sunaina, which which was a very strong influence because she was the one, who got her into training in marital arts. So I think that was a constant presence in the back of her mind. What do you have to say?
Yes, I think, for many of us, our mothers are our first major influences, right? They become our role models. And
That's true.
so it was the same way with Sita. Sita's mother taught her very important things which helped her all of her life. And she taught Sita, for instance, that when something bad happens to you, don't spend your time and your energy just saying, oh, why should this happen? Oh, it's not right. It's not fair. Don't waste your time in all of that. Figure out what you can do and focus on that. And that becomes so important to Sita when she is banished towards the end of the Ramayana. She's
Mm,
heavily pregnant with her twins
that's
and
true.
she's banished. She doesn't even know she's going to be banished. She's just taken by Lakshman to the forest, and then he says, I'm going to leave you here. And she does not waste too much time. Of course, her heart is broken, but she doesn't waste time on things she can't do anything about. She says, I'm going to focus on bringing up my children. That is what I need to do. I'm going to bring them up to be princes, to be good men. I'm going to teach
That's
them everything I know. And I think there's such a lesson in there for all of us. Certainly, there was for me as I was figuring out her character, that we put our energy where it will do good. What is the point of saying this is fair or this is not fair? If I can do something to change it, I will.
yes. So
And she does
that
it
was a very
without bitterness, right? That's the
right.
beautiful thing about Sita. She does it without
Yes,
bitterness. She
bitterness.
never
Absolutely.
tells her sons any bad thing about Ram, not one word. And
Mm,
there's something to learn there too.
true. Yes. So one more question on mythology, Chitra, before we move on to other things. I feel mythology can be like a mirage, malleable at the same time, kind of play field for creative people with immense possibilities of transcreation. But at the same time, lot many allurements offered to the writer's imagination and the sensibilities too, where selection of the right source material would not only be tough, but time consuming as well. So, what have been your sources, Chitra, for your understanding of the epics? How did you remain focused and subsequently narrow down to a definite, dependable source for your novels? And also, to add to this, and did you remain loyal to these sources throughout?
Those are great questions. So, for the Mahabharata, actually, even though it is a very complex, complicated, and much larger text, it was relatively simple because although there are several versions of the Mahabharata, Vyas remains like the main source. And people have deviated a little bit here and there from Vyas, but not so much. So, Vyas was my main source. Kashiram Das in Bengal was my second source with the Bengali Mahabharata.
Right.
And then modern retellings by Raja Gopalachari and Kamala Subramaniam, people like that who are my sources. But with the Ramayana, oh my goodness, there are so many Ramayans. There are like literally 100 Ramayans.
Oh,
And so I had to choose my sources very carefully. Valmiki is my main source. And again, there is the Bengali Kritibasi Ramayana from many centuries back. That
right.
was a major source because, the Bengali versions of the Mahabharata and Ramayana, I grew up hearing them.
Oh,
My mother used to read them to me. So I have a lot of love in my heart for those. And the interesting thing about the Ramayana versions is they're quite different from each other. Even from Vyas to Ramcharit Manas, there is a big, there's a big
yes.
shift there are many differences. And then there is the Kamba Ramayana in the south. That became a big source for me. And along with Kamba Ramayana, I did a lot of reading, and I took a lot of things from the Adbhut Ramayana, which is ascribed to Valmiki, but really focuses on Sita and Mother Sita as a warrior. So, I took many aspects from
Interesting.
these different books. And
That's
that was very good for me to look at all these sources. Not only did it give me a lot of material, but it made me understand something important about our culture, which is that our culture appreciates, respects, and accepts many different ways of looking at one thing. So it's not like in some other cultures, there's like only this is right and everybody else is wrong. Our
wrong.
culture is a very accepting, assimilating, embracive kind of culture, saying that here is the story, it's a lovely story, treat it with respect, but as long as you love and respect it, surely you can have your own interpretation and understanding of it. And because I saw this in my sources, it gave me a lot of encouragement to write my version.
Good. So, Chitra, tell me one thing. I mean, when there were so many sources, I mean, it must have led to some not I won't say confusion, but yes, maybe you're not able to make up your mind whether to take this or this. But my question is, were there any characters or episodes in these two retellings that you made up?
Yes, I certainly did. I made up, well, mostly in Palace of Illusions, I
Okay.
made up. I made up the character of the Dhaima, the maid servant who is really like a mother to Draupadi. And she's with her from her very childhood and well into later life. And she becomes the advisor of Draupadi. And also, she's the one who scolds Draupadi when she does bad things. So,
So very
and that
important
was a
character.
character, the nursemaid. So I
Yes.
just wanted to make up that
Okay.
person to, give someone like that in Draupadi's life, because in reality she doesn't have someone like that. She has no mother. She has no motherly figure. But I thought that was very sad, so I gave her a motherly
That's
figure.
that's that's the humane part of you which just intervened somehow. Well, so coming to the you have already talked about the women in epics, but I would like to know from you, Chitra. You retell the stories of these women in the epics from a feminist viewpoint. You place your women on a pedestal, the goddess or godlike or gifted with some supernatural powers. You even title your last book Before We Visit the Goddess. Now, I have two questions. Why women? You have partly uh, answered that, but I want to know from you. You chose these women as the central characters because they were more complex beings than men, or you simply were awed by the unseen power that each woman is in possession of, or it's your desire to engage in their miseries or the conflicts. And my second question, would you like your views to be termed as feminist? Uh, don't they have the risk of being branded biased?
Yeah, I'll answer the second question first. We have put so many of our own feelings into words, right? The word feminist actually only means centered on women, on the female nature, on the female character. But we have just taken it to mean that it's kind of a fighting word. It's a feminist person as someone who, fights against men. And I don't write my books in that kind of feeling, with that kind of attitude at all, because I don't think men and women need to fight with each other. I think we
It's
need to
true.
come together and make a stronger world together. And I really believe, and that's something I try to portray through my books, that a strong woman is, I don't know, she's an asset to society. She makes a stronger society overall. If our sisters and mothers and daughters and wives are allowed to flourish and to really do the best they can do in the world, won't it make it a better world? So that is the purpose with which I write. That is the standpoint from which you could say my work is
Yes.
feminist, focusing on the amazing abilities of women, even in very difficult circumstances. And my hope is that it will inspire both men and women. And, I love all my women readers, but I always strongly encourage men to read the books. And I
Yes.
love it when my women readers tell me that they're sharing these books with the men in their lives and their families, their friends, because I think that's very, very healthy. And the funny thing is, as you know, being in literature, women have always read the works written by men, which are male centered, right? Because that is so much of literature.
Yes.
So why should it be so difficult to think that men should also read books that are women centered? I think they would
Yes.
learn a lot. I feel they would enjoy a lot because these are enjoyable, exciting, complex characters who are doing, unusual things, are doing it with a lot of courage and drama. So I think these books are for everyone. Books, and not just
Yes.
mine, books with
Absolutely.
women at their center are not books only for women readers. They're really for men and women, everyone who appreciates human life and
That's
complexity.
so.
The
That's
books are for.
that's a kind of egalitarian world. And also, Chitra, you have given voice to, I mean, by written by you, that you give voice to all the women who are pushed to the edges. I mean, that is what brings you very close to the modern woman, as you said earlier. Now, how do you look at this confluence in the context of, you being associated with organizations that work for the welfare of women, like Maitri in San Francisco Bay Area, and they are, and then Pratham Houston, which is an organization which is a literacy organization that works with underprivileged children and also providing job training and small businesses, business startup to women with that kind of seed money. So that's it's absolutely commendable, Chitra, on your part, and congratulations for being so driven for their cause. So how do you react? My question to you now is, how do you react to factual episodes of violence, the crime against women? Given that you are actively engaged in these in their cause.
It is so difficult for me, and that is one of the reasons why I got involved in these kinds of organizations. Because from the time when I was at the University of California, where I got my PhD, I used to volunteer in the Women's Center, and women who were in trouble of many kinds and who needed help would come to this center, and it just made me aware of all of the difficulties that women had, and it made me so aware that I had been so blessed for really no reason of my own. It's not like I was any better than any of the women who were really suffering in difficult positions. It was just luck, and I felt that I really needed to do something for, in whatever way I could, for women who were in such tough situations, and especially for women of our communities who are in these tough situations in this country. It's even harder because they don't have the family support, they don't have that larger social support of friends. They're very alone. So we become, in some ways, their family and friends, these organizations that I'm concerned with. And then I was very interested in educating, and especially educating our girls in India. So that's why I've been so involved with Pratham, because I feel that a lot of these problems that we are seeing later come because the woman has not been given enough education. Not always, sometimes they are educated. Those are other kinds of situations. But because when a woman is not properly educated, she often doesn't have independence because she can't have a job, so she doesn't have her own money. She cannot walk out of an abusive situation, especially if she has kids, because where will she go? How will she take care of her kids? I've seen some really difficult situations. So these two things, working on women's education and giving them support or a place to go or legal help or whatever they need if they're in situations of abuse, that has been important for me. I started, like I said, right from the time I was in college. So I think, and I hope that all of us friends who are listening today, all of our viewers today, will also think about it, because I'm sure in just about every community, wherever we live, there are these women and they really do need help. And, if we can help even one other woman, isn't that something special?
That's
Isn't
true.
that?
That's a that's a very meaningful way to live your life, Chitra. And kudos to you for having taken up the I mean, their cause. Um, well,
Well, I wanted
yes,
to say something. Thank you for saying that. But it is a blessing. It is a privilege. If we can help even one person in our time on earth,
that's true.
isn't that a privilege? Isn't
Oh
that,
yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
there are very few blessings which are greater than that blessing, to be able to
I
be in a
agree.
position to be helping someone.
That's true. That's truly a blessing. That's truly a blessing. And certainly we know that's a blessing, no doubt. But then the way you are supported by people around you, that also adds to uh, the comfort level of the person who is working in this direction.
Yes,
Yes,
and I have to say, my family is so
yes,
supportive, even my husband, even when, they're, especially in working with women who are in situations that are sometimes dangerous, we would have to go out and
yeah.
help these women. And I know my husband was worried for me, but to his credit, he always supported. He never said, stop this. He always said, you must do what you believe in.
So that's a great relationship, and you're truly blessed, Chitra. And coming to these relationships, I mean, I've got a clue here. In your novels, you have how do you look at these relationships? The mutual relationships between man and woman, or between man and man, woman and woman. For instance, between Panchali and Karna, between Panchali and Krishna, or between Sita and Ravan. So, what do you have to say about this?
Well, our epics are so complex, right? They're so amazing and wonderful. So they're not just looking at ordinary relationships. They're saying a human being can have so many kinds of relationships. And in our culture, it is often accepted that men will have many kinds of relationships. But women have often been put into these roles, right? Daughter, wife, mother, at best maybe friend, daughter-in-law. These are very social roles. So but if we go back to our epics, we see that the women in the epics, Draupadi, Sita, they don't stay within them, those, because sometimes because of circumstance. I mean, Sita certainly didn't intend to be near Ravan at any time, but she is. And look at her very strange relationship. She is in captivity, he is her captor, and yet she is able to, because of the power of her personality, she has so much strength and she has so much righteousness that Ravan has to admire her. He has to respect her. So I think that's a very interesting relationship right there. He's fascinated by her, but he respects her, right?
That's
I,
true.
I thought that was a wonderful, it showed some greatness on both sides, on Sita's side, but also on the side of Ravan, who's a very complicated character. But
Yes.
actually, my favorite relationship in all of this is between Draupadi and Karna.
Yeah.
Sorry, Draupadi and Krishna.
Krishna.
Draupadi and Karna is also very interesting,
Yes.
but Draupadi and Krishna, because it is, I don't know, it is the human soul and the divine. It is that relationship. and they are yet so close, they're friends. Krishna is always joking with Draupadi, even when he's showing her her problems, right? So I love that relationship. And, it is like the human soul and the divine. And in fact, Draupadi's journey through life, I thought, is in the Palace of Illusions. It is a symbol of our journey, the journey of the individual human being through life, the journey of the soul in search of our divine, our divine best friend. That is
That's true.
Krishna. And I think all our souls, on some levels, uh, we all long for that. We all long for that divine touch in our lives.
That's no
Sometimes
doubt.
we know it, sometimes we don't. It takes Draupadi all her life to recognize what is the meaning of Krishna in her life, right? But
Yes.
yeah, so I'm very interested in these different kinds of relationships.
Right. So you talked about the journey, that is made, through these illusions. Now, I don't know. I'm just just toying with this idea, which might sound rather funny to you, about the two titles, the Palace of Illusions and the Forest of Enchantment. What if you swap the words in the titles, Chitra? The Palace of Enchantment and the Forest of Illusions? Would they still make
Uh,
sense?
it would, but it would change the meaning of the books,
Yes.
because the
Yes.
Palace of Illusions, the meaning of that palace is not only the Maya Mahal, where
Yes.
Draupadi, that will be built for Draupadi, where she finds her sense of home, but actually Krishna will tell her this entire world, what is it but a palace of illusions?
Yes.
So that is what Draupadi has to learn through her life, that
Yes.
this entire world, what we think is real, is really not. We are always
Absolutely.
mistaking something because of, I guess, our human nature. We always mistake the nature of reality as something else. And therefore, this is a palace of illusions. And this is a metaphor that is in our ancient texts, our Vedas, and definitely in the Mahabharata as well. The Forest of Enchantments, I gave that book that title because forests are very important to Sita. And Mother Sita came out of the earth. She's a daughter of the earth. And therefore, naturally, the natural spaces such as forests become very important to her. And there are three important forests in her life, and in each she will learn something very, very special and very different. And the first is when, the 13 years that she is with Sri Ram in the forests. And there are many different forests. Panchavati is there, and other forests are there. And there she learns how to love, because
Yes.
really, in the constriction of Ayodhya, she's not able to be herself. But here, she's able to
Yes.
love and to be and to learn about love, and really to have that relationship with her husband. So it is an enchanting forest for that
Enchanted.
reason. The
So
second one is very painful, right? The second
right.
one is in Lanka when she is in
Yes.
Ashokvan. She has said, I will not step foot, you cannot make me go into your palace. So Ravan bows to that, and he has her kept in Ashokvan. So that is where she learns strength in herself, that she doesn't know what's happening, right? Until much later when Hanuman will find her, she doesn't know what's happening with Ram. Is he even looking for her? Is he ever going to rescue her? Is she going to be here for the rest of her life? But so she has to dig deep within and find inner strength in a situation that looks desperate, where externally she is helpless. So I think she learns really how to become a very strong person. And
Yeah.
then the third, so that is, it is enchanting, because Ravan has put all this Maya around her, and she has to uh, find her own strength
So
to,
enchantment has both the positive and the negative
yes,
connotations.
yes, yes, it can. And the final forest is where she will find herself when she is pregnant. And then too, she will have to figure out how to live the rest of her life. So she has to draw on another kind of strength. And she also, like we were saying earlier, she has to learn this very important lesson that often we don't have the ability to change what happens to us, but we do have the ability to decide how we're going to respond to that. And that is a great and magical lesson, I think, that all of us can learn. And it will magically change our lives because, I feel that many of our sorrows, many of our tragedies, it's not because of what happens to us, but it's because of how we process or don't process, how we're able to accept, how we're able to move on, how we're able to think about what we need to do, and how we can focus on these positive actions and yet not lose our, I don't know, our integrity. So Mother Sita really shows us that in that last portion where she is in that forest, she's going to be bringing up those children, and she does such a great job. She is probably the world's first portrayal of a single mother. And therefore, I think she's a great, I don't know, she's a great role
Epitome
model.
of strength, kind of.
Yes. And a role model to all of us now who might be going through that kind of problem.
Right. Thanks for talking at length about that very important aspect in our life. And that is what makes the two epics so modern, so contemporary. Chitra, you call yourself an accidental storyteller. So tell us what have been your influences, the major influences in your life that have fashioned the writer in you.
Okay, I think the writers who have helped me, and they have been very, very important because, like I was telling you, I never thought I was going to be a writer. So it's an irony because now I teach at in a creative writing program. So I am helping other writers become writers. Of course, they come with their own talent, but I'm helping to shape them and to focus them and things like that. But I never had that opportunity because by the time I decided I was going to be a writer, I'd finished all my education. I was already teaching. I was teaching literature. So great books have really been my teachers. Great writers have really been my teachers. And I have to say this because this is so true and so appropriate. My first teacher is Tagore. I read his work in Bengali when I was in India. And, when I left India, I couldn't bring much of anything. I just had my 2 suitcases, right? But I did bring a book of Tagore. And when I would feel really sad and
Which
lonely
book?
for home.
Sorry to intervene.
Yes.
Which book was that?
Golpo Guccio, his short
Oh, okay.
stories, Golpo Guccio, that was one of the books. And then later when I went back, I brought Ghare Baire, Home and the World, that novel. And then I have taught that novel also several times because, I was just amazed by his intelligence. Tagore is so intelligent. He is so, I don't know, he really understands what's going on inside of people. He also really understands what is happening in a community. He understands society and the forces of history very well. And he's very, very sympathetic to women, very unusual in his time. And he has made women the narrators of their tales, as in Ghare Bairi, one of the major narrators in Home and the World is a woman. And I was like, how did he know all these things about what a woman feels? So that was a big influence for me. And I continue to love his work. He's
Okay.
truly a world writer, a writer for the world.
Right. Thanks for telling us
Then,
that, Chitra.
yes. And so it's so wonderful that this is a Tagore festival. I thought,
Oh,
wow, this is like things coming
oh,
together.
that's the what a confluence.
Yes, a
So,
confluence.
yeah, one probably last question touching upon the adaptations of your works. Now, Chitra, generally writers have mixed feelings for their adapted outcome. Uh, in your case, tell us how much pleasure or pain have they afforded you, and any special reaction that you can recall, and also which is your favorite adaptation?
Well, it's hard to say because I like different adaptations for different reasons. For example, just the cinematography of Mistress of Spices is so beautiful. There are
Yes.
scenes where she is a young girl in a magical island. Then she is in
Hello.
her store, which is a different kind of magical space. So there were a lot of lovely things, a lot of characterizations that were beautiful. But I think the adaptation of Sister of My Heart, which was made into a TV movie, a TV serial by Suhasini Maniratnam, I really appreciated it because she kept it very simple, very real, and very close to the book. So I appreciated that because I know that that is rare, and as it should be, because the director has her own vision. The book is my work, but the movie is really the director's work, and it
Yes.
doesn't often come together. But I felt that in Sister of My Heart, it really came together. And I'm looking forward to the other movies which have been
Yes.
optioned.
So would you
So,
like to spill a
fingers
few
crossed.
beans? Would you like to spill a few beans on your upcoming adaptation, Chitra?
Actually, I have no beans to spill because the movie companies and I guess the producers,
Okay.
they know that authors are always talking, so they haven't told me
They
anything
haven't
that
told,
would
shared with you.
affect.
Okay.
They only
All
tell
right,
me
we'll come
things
to
when
hear
they're ready
about
for
it
the
sooner or later. So we can have
podcast.
some patience till then.
But surely, when I know anything, I have a Facebook page and a Twitter account. I love
Okay.
to
Okay.
communicate with my
We'll
readers
keep
on that,
track.
and I will surely put the information.
Yes. Yes. Chitra, we can take some questions from that people have shared with us.
Sure, sure. Would love to.
All right. So, Chitra, one of the questions is about your living in the US. You live in the US, you write about Indians, Indian mythology. So, does your being there affect a change in your perspective toward Indian sensibility? And how does the Indian diaspora contribute to your the writer mind?
That's a great question. And it's a complex question because there are several different kinds of answers for that. One of the things is, of course, I mean, the immigrant literature that I write, the immigrant stories, I could not write them if I wasn't living here and undergoing these experiences myself, but more than myself, observing them around me, observing them in the lives of the people I come across. So that gives me not only material, but inspiration. I know how people feel, I hear them converse about it. I'm living in this reality, and that just makes it much easier to write about it. It also makes me realize how important the immigrant experience is, how many people, not just in the US, but really the immigrant story is a worldwide story, right? And I mean, India has it too. As we immigrate from other countries to India, people come to India, or from even from one part of India to another, which is sometimes almost like going to a different country. Language is different, food is different, everything is different. So the immigrant story, I think, is a universal story. And for me, I could not write it if I wasn't an immigrant myself. So that is one part of it. The other part, writing about India, it's a very interesting paradox. It is at once more difficult when you live away because you're not in it all the time, but also it is easier because you're able to see it. You know how one has to sometimes back off to get perspective? And I find that not living in India sometimes gives me a perspective. Now, it's very important for me to keep in touch with what's going on in India. And I do that with regular visits. I have relatives, I have long WhatsApp conversations with them, and they tell me what's going on and how they feel about it. And when I visit, of course, that's very important. Just get a feel of the country, a sense of what's going on, just what's happening. So those are the
Right.
ways in which I keep myself current. And of course, now with the internet, research has become so much easier. I really thank God for
Yes.
that.
Yes. So, Chitra, one more question that that has come to us. This is about the all-powerful emotion, which is love, and you have presented different facets of love in your books. What do you have to say about this? The
Yeah,
power
well,
of love.
love is very important, and I love writing about it also. And but I want to show the different facets, like you said. I think that is really important because often, especially here in the West, when people say love, they only mean romantic love, and romantic love is of course important. But there are so many other kinds of love in our lives that enrich our lives: love of mother for child, love
That you
of
see in,
child for parent.
yes, Sita and her two children. That's so strong.
Yes, yes, yes. That is her, probably, at the end of her life, that is her strongest
Strongest.
relationship and love. And one of the things, and Forest of Enchantments actually becomes like an exploration of love. Throughout her
Yes.
life, Sita is learning something different about love. And one of the final things she says is that the purest love it is between mothers and small children because they don't want anything from each other. They just want to love each other.
Yes.
So,
Unconditional.
yes. But my upcoming book, The Last Queen, which will come out in January 2021, that is also very much about love. And that is a romantic love story in the
Wow.
beginning because,
Looking forward to that.
thank you, because Queen
Mhm.
Jindan, hers is
Mhm.
such an amazing story. What a special woman. She was the daughter of a kennel keeper. Her father was a dog trainer in the palace. And
Mhm.
from that position, she became the queen, the favorite queen of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. I mean, what a special woman she would
Interesting.
must have been to
Yes,
be able to really make the king fall in love with her. And
absolutely.
but so that is the first part of her life. But then after she becomes a widow, her life is very much around that of her son. And this is a very troubled time. The British are encroaching on all of the kingdoms in different parts of India. And certainly they're trying their best to take Punjab. And she fights so hard for her son. And she will continue to fight for him even after the British take over Punjab. She never gives up. I think it is a very special story of a mother's love.
So
So,
it's a historical genre, right? Is it? It's a
yes,
historic.
yes, it
Oh,
is a historical story, and yet, although it is set in the 1800s, I think Jindan's story is again so modern, so contemporary. We have so much to learn from her courage, her commitment, her love for her son, and just her determination. I will not give up, no matter what the British do. I will not give up. That is something. So to say, to have a value and to say I will not give up, I mean, that's, we can all learn from that,
that's
right? It's a valuable lesson for all of us, men or women. That is a valuable lesson.
so. So we have such a wonderful message from you, Chitra, and I mean, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And now I hand over to Siddharth.
Well, thank you so much for your lovely questions. They were
Thanks,
really
Chitra.
very,
Thank you.
very wonderful.
Thank you, Chitra.
Well, thank you so much, Seema ji and Chitra ji. It was a truly fascinating conversation, and I'm sure we could have gone on for another hour or yeah, probably even longer because there is just so much to unravel and so much to explore in each of Chitra ji's work that it is truly amazing. And that was Chitra Banerjee talking about her work, her inspiration, her motivation, her process of research to tell these wonderful stories which we all love, and why she's also so deeply associated with activism related to education for women and upholding rights of women. That is truly so wonderful, Chitraji. We truly appreciate that. And I would like to just come back to one of her earlier quotes where she says, "Writing what we know can become restrictive," and she's literally lived and written by this rule. And Here we are with fascinating retellings of the two epics from completely different vantage points and exploring the nuances and complexities of these epics. And finally, to our shared joy, she also talks about Tagore being her first teacher and also being impressed with the sheer brilliance of Tagore. And I mean, even till today, all of us are taken in awe by his length and breadth of work. And I'm sure he's that one world mascot which India is so proud of. And with this festival, we continue taking his legacy forward. And in our own small, humble way, we would like to do some, justice with the kind of body of work he left behind. So, thank you so much,
Thank
Chitra
you.
ji, for being at Vishwarang. And thank you so much, Seema ji, for wonderfully moderating the session and getting the best out of our speaker. And from the Vishwarang side, we wish Chitra ji all the best. May you continue writing, continue inspiring all of us for years to come. And may all the readers and listeners keep waiting eagerly for more and more of your work to come out. And all the best for your upcoming book in January 2021.
Thank you so much. It
Thank
has
you.
been a real pleasure to be a part of Vishwarang, and I'm
Pleasure,
honored.
pleasure.
Thank you. So that was Chitra Banerjee, and we were in conversation with one of the most prolific and prominent writers of our time. Stay tuned to Vishwarang YouTube live channel for more exciting and interesting content coming up in the next few days. See you at Vishwarang 2020. This is Siddharth signing off for this session now. Take care, stay safe. Namaskar.